Good morning. I want to talk today about the upcoming lunar month for countries and people, part one. This lunar month goes from November 1st through November 30th. So it is going to coincide with the calendar month for once. Okay, well, let's see if I can share my screen and then we'll get started. It'll take just a minute here as I have to get rid of some panels so that I can see what I'm doing. We're almost there. And let me get back to the beginning. And there we are. Okay. So this is Lunar Month for Countries and People, Part One. America, Biden, Harris, Trump, China, Israel, Netanyahu, Hamas, Iran. And it goes from the new moon on November 1st through the new moon on November 30th. Okay. And for each country or person that I look at, I'll have their horoscope wheel on the inside and the transits at the time of the full moon on the outside. Over here, I talk about the predominant transits for the month. And by using the chart for the full moon on the outside, that is exactly halfway between the lunar months. So that makes it a little easier to see where the planets are and what's going on with these transits. Now, the other thing I'll point out is that for America, I tend to use the July 1776 chart for the passage of the Declaration of Independence. July 4th is when the Declaration of Independence was printed and distributed. Both charts are relevant, as are charts for things like the Constitution of the United States. And this is because, in my opinion, the creation of America was not a single moment, but a series of events. And the charts for each of those events can have some relevance. Now, in comparing the July 2nd to the July 4th chart for America, since the public was made aware of the Declaration of Independence, primarily on July 4th, I see the Sibley chart for July 4th, 1776, as representing more the persona of America, whereas the June 2nd chart represents more our inner self. Now, there's not going to be very much difference between the two charts. If you go with accepted times, you'll have differences in rising signs and midheaven. Most of the planets will not have moved very much in just a couple of days. The only big difference is going to be the moon, which will have moved from uh, Capricorn almost 30 degrees into Aquarius. And that kind of makes sense. If you think of Moon and Aquarius as the persona for America, well, that's how we like to see ourselves. We like to see ourselves as spreading democracy around the world, uh, working with alliances like NATO and the G7, and being humanitarians and giving lots and lots to global charities, which America does. But the July 2nd chart is more how we are on the inside. That has Saturn in Capricorn, which has more to do with control and restriction. And in reality, we have tried to control several countries around the world, uh, sometimes in the name of peace, perhaps more often in the name of our own economic uh, progress. Uh, we have also restricted people within our country. We were involved in slavery for several years. We have engaged, some would say, in genocide against the Native American population, the indigenous population. And America. And we have suppressed, and unfortunately to this day, we continue to suppress women. That is another aspect of having Moon in Capricorn. So, anyway, I often prefer the July 2nd chart to the July 4th chart, but again, there's not going to be that much difference between the two, except for things like rising sign, midheaven, and the position of the moon. Now, with that said, let's take a look at what's going on with America in November. And of course, it's going to be a very important month for America because the presidential election is on November 5th. Now, you can see from what I have over here on the right that we have a mix of hard aspects and soft aspects. And this time around, if an aspect becomes exact during the lunar month, I've tried to put the date in here on which it becomes exact. And those that are becoming exact will tend to be stronger. Okay, now quick word about good and bad aspects. The good aspects will help ameliorate the bad aspects. But at the same time, it's the bad aspects that tend to come front and center. For instance, we may be feeling very good about something. We may be feeling very good in some part of our mind or our body, but if we have pain or distress in another part, that is what is going to grab our attention the most. Okay, so let's begin at the top here. We have transiting Chiron conjunct natal Chiron. That is going to be exact on November 9th, very shortly after the election. And the nature of Chiron is that it really wants us to transcend. It nudges us to go beyond the visible reality that we can see, what's represented by the planet Sun through Saturn, to the invisible reality represented by planets like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Chiron itself usually orbits between Saturn and Uranus, and it forms a bridge between the seen and the unseen. It really tries to nudge us toward this more joyous, more expansive reality, but not everyone is ready for that. And consequently, their hard Saturnian shells need to then first be cracked, and that's where the wounding from Chiron comes in. Wounding that has to be followed by healing, and then hopefully by transcendence. Now, as I have pointed out in other videos, we went through a similar thing with Chiron back in the early 70s. And the wounding at that time was primarily political. Vice President Spiro Agnew had to resign because of crimes that he was involved in that were uncovered. And shortly after that, President Richard Nixon had to resign as a result of Watergate and his involvement in the cover up. It was a time of great political wounding for America. But at the same time, we also saw signs of transcendence. The Senate Select Committee to investigate Watergate was very thorough, very reasoned, and very transcendent, very eloquent in their delivery of the testimony, their delivery of the facts of what was going on. And those of us who were alive at that time remember the eloquence of Representative Barbara Jordan from Texas. So this time around, we're again going through political wounding. And again, there are signs of eloquence. The political wounding this time has come from Donald Trump and from the January 6th insurrection. And the eloquence has come from the January 6th committee that investigated these misdeeds and their causes. But again, the country's going on through political wounding. It's also worth pointing out that in the early 70s, when Transient Chiron was first in opposition to America's Saturn, did that 3 times, followed by 3 Chiron returns, 3 conjunctions of Transient Chiron with natal Chiron. Back in the early 70s, when that happened, we not only had the political wounding of Watergate, we also had the passage or the decision on Roe v. Wade, which gave women the right to have control over their own bodies. During the period that we're in now, we have had Transient Chiron once again making 3 oppositions to natal Saturn, which is being followed by 3 Chiron returns, 3 conjunctions of Transient Chiron to natal Chiron. And again, we've not only experienced political wounding from Donald Trump and the January 6th insurrection, we've also experienced political eloquence. And Roe v. Wade was in the news again, but this time a very conservative Supreme Court took away from women the right to have control over their own bodies. And that is creating a lot of wounding to the body of America right now, literally. So we had this first Chiron return this time around occurring, I believe, on April 20th, 2024, earlier this year, and not long after the very momentous April 8th, 2024 solar eclipse where Sun, Moon, and Chiron were all exactly conjunct at 19 degrees, 24 minutes of Aries. And that conjunction has made 2024 in many ways a year of wounding for people around the world. There has been wounding through horrific wars in Ukraine and in the Middle East, and there has been horrific wounding through uh, disasters that are most likely a result of climate change, wildfires, hurricanes, floods, and other tragic events. So, right now in November, and then in the early part of next year too, transiting Chiron, it will hit that eclipse point again of 19 degrees, 24 minutes of Aries. It's very close to that already at the time of the full moon on November 15th. And when it hits that eclipse point again, it can reactivate all the wounding that that April 8th eclipse has caused. Issues that came up around April 8th, such as problems between Iran and Israel. Those can come to the forefront again as Chiron is getting closer to that eclipse point of 19 degrees, 24 minutes of Aries. And we're actually already seeing things escalate more right now between Israel and Iran. But anyway, it's very interesting that the Chiron return will happen just a few days after the November 5th election. And the big question is, will the results of this election cause wounding for America, or will it help us transcend and move forward into the future? I don't know, because astrology is only half the equation. Astrology only gives a weather report. The other half of the equation is free will and what people decide to do in response to these astrological influences in response to the weather being caused by celestial configurations. Okay, I'm spending more time on this first chart than probably most of the others, but following this Chiron return on November 9th, and just keep an eye out for what happens in America, whether it be wounding or transcendence through either uh, climate change or political processes. Just keep an eye open to see what's going on. The next thing we have on our list is transing Uranus making a semi-square to the natal sun. That can cause some unexpected events to happen. And let me just go back to the next slide. That is going to be in effect during the first half of November. It's not going to be exact. It's kind of waning right now. This can cause some revolutionary activities in America, some unexpected events, and with the sun not only in the 10th house of power and status, but with sun in charts for countries usually representing the leader, this could represent some unexpected news involving President Biden or perhaps other leaders, political or otherwise, within the country. We have transiting Saturn making a semi-square to natal Pluto. That will be exact on November 21st. And you can see how strong this aspect is going to be. It goes into December also. So that is going to last this entire lunar month and be pretty strong. And this is creating a sort of conflict between control, regulation, and those who have power. Now, Pluto is in Aquarius now, so power has been moving from individuals to groups. But just because power moves to the people or power moves to one group of people, such as, for instance, the Supreme Court, that doesn't mean that they use that power wisely. And we're going to have some sort of tension going on. Saturn is control, regulation, restriction, some sort of stress between that and the individuals that have power. And I'm saying individuals this time because even though transiting Pluto is in Aquarius, natal Pluto for the USA chart, it's still in Capricorn. Now, one of the ways in which this might be working out is in strikes. With Pluto, transing Pluto having gone into Aquarius, power being shifted to the people, we have also seen more strikes by workers who are demanding more power and more of a piece of the economic, a larger piece of the economic pie. So that could be what's going on here, particularly since Saturn will be in the sixth house in this July 2nd chart for America. So this could be struggles between workers and corporations. Now we also have transing Jupiter conjunct natal Mars. That will be exact on November 8th. And in all the July 1776 charts for America, you have the square between natal Neptune and natal Mars. And this results in a periodic kind of violence based upon fanaticism, fanatical beliefs, beliefs that someone has been wronged in some sense, and that passion then drives that aggression. Mars is in Gemini, so the aggression would prefer to express itself verbally through communication, through angry rhetoric. But time and time again, it goes beyond rhetoric to actual physical violence. Jupiter, of course, is all about growth and expansion, so that could magnify whatever aggressive feelings are being felt at this time. And it seems very interesting and somewhat ominous that this aspect is exact right after November 8th, or on November 8th. That's right after the election on November 5th, and right before the Chiron return on November 9th. So I hope it doesn't happen, but it looks like there is an increased likelihood of violence occurring following the November 5th election. It doesn't have to happen. Things are just being nudged in that direction. But for every astrological low road that one could take, there's also a high road president. We don't have to reflect the worst images of these planets. We can always choose the better path. And hopefully we will. But at the very least, it looks like there will be some sort of tension or crisis following the November 5th presidential election in America. And I might also point out if we look at just uh, transiting planets, on November 3rd, 2 days before the election, transiting Mars will be exactly opposite transiting Pluto. And that also increases tension in America and around the world. Okay, let's look at some of the good stuff that's going on. We have transiting Chiron making a sextile to natal Mars. That will be exact on November 15th, and that will perhaps ameliorate some of the negative aspects to Mars. This can help bring out the good side of Chiron and bring that good side translated into good physical actions. And Mars is also the ruler of Aries, and Chiron is in Aries, so that will strengthen the harmonious connection between Chiron and Mars that reaches its peak around mid November. We also have transiting Neptune, making a sextile to natal Pluto. And this is kind of fitting in with what's going on with the transits. We have this triangle between transiting Uranus, transiting Neptune, and transiting Pluto that's been forming for quite a while. It's a trine and two sextiles, what some call a mini grand trine. That is gaining in strength. It'll be stronger next year and the following year. But what this triangle is doing is it's bringing in a new and more transcendent energy into the planet. It is bringing in a newer and higher perspective to things, which hopefully will become the norm. It will be a perspective where people feel more connection with the whole. It's going to be strongest once we have Pluto and Aquarius, Neptune, and Aries, and Uranus and Gemini. So it'll be strongest after three sign changes occur. And that is going to change things. We're going to have a few years where this higher, more transcendent energy comes in. It will not only be a time when uh, men have dreams and visions, but younger people in particular, they will probably respond to this more strongly and more readily. And it's going to be this perspective that involves invention, curiosity, ideas, turning visions into reality. That's going to be Neptune in Aries. And power being shared by people, that's going to be Pluto in Aquarius. And humanitarian efforts and charity and great technological advances. Now, since the USA Pluto is very close to where transiting Pluto is, America has been experiencing part of that now. And we're seeing that currently with transiting Neptune making a sextile to natal Pluto. Okay, transiting Uranus is making a trine to natal moon in the July 2nd chart. That bodes well for uh, creativity and innovation of the people, good things happening with people and with women. However, if the July 4th chart is what holds sway here, uh, transiting Uranus will be squaring that moon in Aquarius, and that could be bad for Vice President Harris and for the political power of women in general. So, be interesting to see the outcome of this election. Transiting Uranus is making a sextile to natal Mercury. That'll be exact on November 24th, 21st. Since Uranus is still in Cancer, that could impact, I'm sorry, not in Cancer, but in Taurus, that could impact our economy, our wealth, our values, and our possessions. And Mercury can also represent commerce. Uranus is innovation, so things may go well financially during this month. Uh, and then we have Jupiter, transiting Jupiter, making a sextile to natal Chiron. That is going to be exact on November 5th. And at the same time that it's making a sextile to natal Chiron, it's also making a sextile to transiting Chiron. And this is a beneficial aspect which tends to bring out the best in Chiron. This creates a time when uh, people feel a more transcendent, a more joyous energy coming in. And this aspect came with an orb at about the time of the Democratic National Convention. It was no surprise to me that at that convention they adopted a politics of joy. That is so in line and so resonant with Jupiter making a sextile to Chiron, which tends to bring transcendent, enduring, and joyous things into the planet. So I see signs that more and more people in America are responding to these higher energies. On both sides of the political spectrum, I'm hearing more and more people saying they're tired of the division. They want us to come back together. And so we may be reaching that point where we can debate rationally and constructive with one another once again. Well, I certainly hope so. But with transiting Jupiter making a sextile to both transiting Chiron and natal Chiron in the July 1776 charts for America, America is leading the way in this transcendence and this joy right now. So, who will win the presidential election? I don't know, and astrology doesn't know. Uh, as I and others have said before, astrologically is just as close as it is in the polls. Both candidates have very beneficial things going on for them that in many elections, those beneficial things would be a clear indication they're probably going to win. But each candidate also has negatives in their charts that suggests they might lose. So when you have two candidates that astrologically have strong indicators that each might win and strong indicators that each might be disappointed, you know, from an astrological point of view, that the race will probably be neck and neck, a dead heat. And that is what the polls are currently showing us. So it's very difficult to say who's going to win. It's easier to see that there will be some tension immediately following uh, the November 5th election, some other stresses later on in the lunar month. At the same time, we have these helpers, we have these lifelines. And even though the tensions are what are front and center, they're what's in the foreground, in the background. I can see people responding to these higher perspectives, and they're trying to find a way out of the wounding and division that's in America right now. And I hope that succeeds. And in spite of all the tensions, transing Jupiter, sextile natal Chiron being exact on November 5th, that is a very good sign. So I hope things turn out in the best possible way. Now, here again, you can see when using these bars, when each of these aspects will be strongest, when they'll be exact, if they come exact this month. And I hope things work out well for America in the short term and in the long term. It will be a very important month astrologically and politically for the United States of America. Okay, let's take a look at Joe Biden. He has a rather even split between hard aspects and soft aspects, difficult times and easy times. He is transing Neptune, making a sesquiquadrate to natal Mars, which is in his 12th house. And let's see, the worst that could happen in this case would be assassination. Heavens forbid. I certainly hope that doesn't happen. Well, that would be an extreme outcome. And so that is probably not the most likely. Neptune uh, erases boundaries between things. Mars is our physical energy, and it has to do with assertion, aggression, and sometimes fighting. With Neptune making a sesquiquadrate to Mars, that could weaken the physical constitution. He might even have a little illness or a cold or other virus at this point. Psychologically, he could even get angry about something. Uh, as Neptune dissolves boundaries within the mind, it could be one could be overtaken by feelings and find it harder to to contain whatever anger is felt. So those are just a few of the things that could result from this sesquiquadrate from transing Neptune to natal Mars. It could be you could feel a little sores, have a mild virus. It could be things that happen that we never hear about. Transiting Jupiter, meanwhile, will be making a square to the natal midheaven. That will be uh, exact on November 7th, just 2 days after the presidential election. Jupiter is moving through his seventh house, which has to do with others. It's in Gemini, which has to do with communication. The midheaven has to do with Biden's status in society, which is very good now as president of the United States. Squares to his midheaven from Jupiter have often resulted in criticisms from others when it's coming from the seventh house. And again, it's interesting. This is happening right after the November 5th election. So there may be things that happen in that election that cause some people out there to be very critical of President Biden. Again, that's just one possibility. I don't know exactly what will happen. Usually, we can look at what does happen and very clearly see how it relates to squares and tensions beforehand, but trying to predict exactly what's going to happen before the event occurs, that is like in quantum physics, trying to predict the location of an electron before you measure it. In quantum physics, before you measure it, the electron does not actually exist at a particular location. You just simply have a curve of probabilities, and those probabilities say that there's a really good chance the electron will be found over here, another good chance it's found over there or somewhere else when you actually make the measurement. Astrology works exactly the same way. A transit like transing Jupiter square natal midheaven, we know a variety of ways in which that might work out, but we don't know which of those ways will become the reality. We have to wait for that astrological wave function to collapse. Okay, now also in Biden's chart, we have transing Pluto square the natal moon. That has been ongoing off and on for at least a year or two. And this can be very ominous. Um, Pluto square the moon. Well, worst case scenario is Pluto rules his eighth house of death. So the worst case scenario would be death. This could also represent physical illness or emotional trauma. The moon is in his fifth house, which rules children, among other things. And so this can also refer to uh, the situation surrounding his son, Hunter. And in the past, as this square has got close or exact, it's often been issues involving Hunter Biden that have come up. Uh, I don't remember when Hunter Biden is scheduled for sentencing. I believe he's scheduled for sentencing in the near future. And so this could refer to anguish that President Biden feels over the fate of his son Hunter that he loves very much. Um, Also, in the past, I think he's gotten occasionally a cold or a virus when this square has gotten close. Uh, so there's a variety of things that can happen, uh, with death being the most extreme outcome, but that's not necessarily the most likely. So there are going to be some stresses in President Biden's life this lunar month, but he also has some lifelines. Transing Neptune is still making a square to his natal sun. He's still a person with vision, and that vision can give him a certain aura, a certain charisma that can be very beneficial. He has transing Uranus sextile, natal Jupiter. That will be exact on November 19th. Uh, and that might be pretty close to when transiting Jupiter makes an exact sextile, not with natal Chiron, but transiting Chiron. I'd have to look that up. But if so, then those two events, they'll at least come close to one another. So they will probably coincide, and this will be creativity and innovation harmonizing with growth and expansion in Joe Biden's chart. And Jupiter is a ruler of his first house. So this impacts and helps him personally. We'll see some probably some sort of innovative ideas coming from Joe Biden at this time, or some innovative leadership. And then we have transiting Saturn, making a trine to natal Mars that will help offset or ameliorate any bad effects resulting from transiting Neptune's sesquiquadrant, his natal Mars. Transiting Saturn, Saturn is regulation and control. Oops, so it will try and stabilize things, and this will help strengthen his uh, physical constitution and stabilize any tendencies toward angry outbursts. Hopefully. I'm going to have a quick sip of water. Okay. And on this chart, the lunar month, it's all of November, and December is going to be the next lunar month. But you can see when the good aspects and when the bad aspects, when each of these will be strong, and when they are going to be exact. Okay. And let's see, Jupiter square midheaven, that's exact on the 7th. And we have the sextile of Uranus to Jupiter being exact on the 19th. Now let's take a look at the chart for Kamala Harris. And what's interesting, for good or bad, she has nothing but hard aspects this month. Actually, if I look at her transits, she has a couple of good transits right at the beginning of this month, but I am not including them because they're fading so rapidly, and then they'll be gone. So what is really impacting her this month are all the squares, conjunctions, and oppositions. Now, the knee-jerk reaction would be to say that, therefore, she's going to lose the election. Look at all this adversity in her chart. How could she win? Well, I don't see this as meaning either that she will win or lose the election. This simply means there is going to be a lot of stuff to deal with, a lot of astrological intention, tension, and stress that will be present. Now, to tell the truth, if she wins the presidency, this would all make sense. Uh, if she wins, she will immediately have to get to work assembling her new government, deciding who to nominate for uh, the various secretary positions, uh, adding more details to policies, making legislative plans. There was a lot of work that properly should be done by whoever wins the election. And so this could also be interpreted as a sign that she might win, since her month is going to contain a lot of work. Well, let's take a look at these quickly, one by one. It looks like we have a couple of aspects that become exact during this month. We start out with transing Pluto, making a sesquiquadrant with natal Pluto. This can be transformation of her own level of power, learning to integrate that power. It can also represent going after those who abuse the power that they have. And that is what she has done through her career as a prosecuting attorney. She has tried to heal the victims, represented by Chiron, air 10th house, by prosecuting those who have abused their power, represented by Pluto in the 4th house. Transing Pluto is also making a semi-square to her natal Chiron. At worst, that could wound her professionally. At best, this could transform her professionally, make her more transcendent. She has transing Saturn's sesquiquadrant natal sun, that would usually be seen as not good. Saturn can be restriction, depression, and denial. And let's see, where is that transiting Saturn? Right up here. And her transiting sun is down here. Okay, so that's putting some restrictions upon her. And that is going to be exact twice in November, once on November 2nd, and then again on the 26th, as Saturn, uh, it looks like it'll switch from direction, retrograde to direct or direct to retrograde, in order to make those two exact aspects. And then we'll have transiting Saturn, making a semi-square to her natal moon. This could also depress her emotions a bit or make them more serious. We have transiting Saturn opposite her natal Uranus. Uh, this could be some unexpected developments, in particular things from her personal life affecting her professional life, since it's fourth house opposite 10th house. She has transiting Jupiter, square natal Venus. That is going to be exact on November 25th. And whenever you have a difficult aspect involving Jupiter, uh, there's always the danger of overreach there. There's always the danger of overdoing uh, something or doing things not with just the proper amount. There's always a danger of overreach or excess of some sort. Transiting Uranus, conjunct natal Jupiter, that can cause, again, unexpected developments. And let's see, uh, Jupiter rules her seventh house. A lot of the sign of Sagittarius that Jupiter rules is making up her sixth house. So this could be some unexpected developments in working with others or even in health. And then transiting Jupiter is sesquiquadrate, uh, natal Mercury. Here's Jupiter, here's natal Mercury. Again, that could be some sort of communication problems where she might overreach or overthink something, overdo a message in some sort of way. So we look at this, we see it's pretty much just hard aspects for Kamala in both November and December. So it would be nice to have a few more trines and sextiles, but those aren't the cards that have been dealt. Nonetheless, I should say both she and Trump, once again, they both have good indications that could lead to either of them winning on November 5th, and then they have hard aspects that could lead to either of them losing on November 5th. Okay, now, if we look at Donald Trump, he's got a lot of hard aspects and a lot of soft aspects at the same time. He has, let's see, three aspects up here involving Jupiter, and conjunctions and oppositions. My program lists them as hard aspects, but when Jupiter's involved, they tend to be softer. So these are not necessarily bad aspects. These can be aspects of growth, expansion, and luck and winning. And then she also has transiting Jupiter, trinatal Jupiter. That's exact on November 28th. That's extraordinarily beneficial. That has to do with growth, expansion. That could expand Donald Trump's luck. And you have to wonder if, if he loses the election, what will he be so happy about on November 28th by the end of the month? Um, it could be, though, that this has nothing to do with the election. It could have to do with court cases. He's had a variety of good aspects throughout the year, which have been lifelines to him, which has resulted in court cases being dropped or the Supreme Court ruling things like presidents have absolute immunity for their presidential actions while in office. It could be some legal thing that gets settled in a way that he likes. So uh, he could still either win or lose the election, as could Kamala Harris. Now, if we look at his transits, he's got transit Uranus, square natal Mars. Uh, he will tend to be very angry, tend to be very impulsive, uh, talk in that kind of speech characterized by loose associations that he says is really genius speech that he calls the weave, where he just is always jumping from one topic to another, to another, to another. Uh, he could also be more accident prone during this period, or there could even be another assassination tip. There could be some sudden physical accident uh, that occurs. He has Jupiter, both conjunct his north node, opposite his natal moon, and so it's also going to be opposite the south node, and it's Jupiter is also conjunct his natal Uranus, and transiting Uranus is conjunct his natal midheaven, and Jupiter as a planet, it's considered a benefic, and it could act very beneficial here to expand his power, expand his status in society. Transiting Uranus conjunct the midheaven, that refers to some sudden change in status. Well, I suppose that either losing the presidency altogether or suddenly being re-elected as president, those could both be changes in status. Um, but whether the change works out well or not, it's hard to say. Uh, he also has transiting Uranus making a semi-square to his natal Mercury. This will exacerbate his tendency to do what he calls the weave, to just jump from one topic to another. He will be angry and very manic, very accident prone, but also very lucky in some ways. And these lifelines are going to help him too whenever transiting Chiron is making a good aspect to things like his moon as north node, also the south node. He tends to get healing from his base. Transiting Uranus is making a sextile to his natal Venus. Interestingly, that will be exact on November 4th. That bodes well for him winning because Venus rules his 10th house of status and society. Uranus is unexpected events, but it's making a sextile to his Venus, so you expect a more beneficial outcome. So that could be a beneficial change in his status. And then, as we talked about, transiting Jupiter will make a trine to his natal Jupiter. That becomes exact on November 28th. That could give him a lot of luck with this election. And if it's not the election that goes his way, it will probably be something else that goes his way as this aspect gets closer and closer to being exact toward the end of the month. Okay, and here you can see when these various aspects will be in effect. And let's see. I want to double check a couple of things here. Yeah, I got that. I had one trancing Uranus conjunct his midheaven. It's pretty close to that. Uh, is it within 1 degree of orb? It may not get within 1 degree of orb, but it gets pretty close. I don't have it listed over here. But we see it looks like the good aspects are going to be a little bit more predominant this month. We have uh, hard aspects at the beginning, but the really hard ones are fading. The others involve Jupiter, which could actually be beneficial. So November is looking pretty good for Donald Trump as far as planetary transits go. Okay, now let's turn our attention to China. They've been having some problems economically, and that will probably continue for a while, though some good aspects from Jupiter are probably going to help renew their growth to some extent. We have Transient Chiron making a sesquiquadrate to natal Chiron. That is bringing about some wounding for the country. We have Transient Saturn opposite natal Saturn. That is bringing about restriction to the country, and its economy has contracted. We have Transient Jupiter making a sesquiquadrate to the natal moon. Uh, the moon can represent the people. Jupiter likes, in situations like this, to overdo things. Its growth aspect is not being well coordinated with the people. The people may overspend. They may do too much spending, too much buying, and maybe that will result in inflation for the country. But there will be something that the people are going overboard on, most likely. Uh, but these good aspects, transiting Jupiter sextile natal Pluto and transiting Jupiter sextile the North Node, that is going to be very good for growth and for the people uh, who hold the power in China. And you can see Jupiter will be completing kind of a mini grand trine with Pluto and the North Node. So uh, there are going to be some good things going on for China, even though it's been going through a period it appears of some economic wounding and lowered growth, a contracting economy. And here you can see when each of these aspects will be in effect. Saturn opposite natal Saturn, that's going to be exact in the next month on lunar month on December 7th. Chiron sesquiquadrate natal Chiron, that's in effect almost the entire lunar month. Those are going to be the predominant aspects this month. We start getting into that growth and maybe the latter third of November, certainly in the latter half of November. And so as we get toward the end of the month, the outlook for China will probably tend to improve. Okay, if we look at Israel, well, they're going to continue to have some hard aspects to deal with. A few good things, however, going on for the country and its leaders. Uh, Neptune is involved in a couple of these hard aspects, actually, three of them if you look at natal Neptune. So, uh, passions and sometimes misinformation uh, will probably continue to drive actions. And let's see exactly what we have. We have transiting Neptune is going to make a square to natal Jupiter. And let's see. Jupiter, it's in, where are we? Ah, here we are. Jupiter is in Sagittarius, natal Jupiter. And it looks like it's in the third house, which has to do with communication. Jupiter's in Sagittarius, which has to do with other people's ideas. So there is probably going to be a lack of clarity still in communication. Uh, some people saying one thing, some people saying other things, deliberate disinformation going on, as well as people sometimes being ruled by their passions and their delusional ideas rather than reality. Transiting Neptune is also making a sesquiquadrant to natal Pluto. Pluto's in the 10th house. This has to do with uh, the leaders in society. There could be some scandal involving their actions, some deception, or there could be misinformation, disinformation spread about them. Transiting Uranus will be making a sesquiquadrant with natal Neptune, and that is more the same. Uranus is unexpected events, is going through the eighth house of death, transformation, other people's resources. Neptune is in the 12th house of self undoing and hidden enemies. There could be assassination attempts. There could be ways in which Israel shoots itself in the foot again through its actions. Uh, so its own actions could cause some bad results for Israel. Transiting Jupiter, making a semi-square to the natal moon. Again, when you have difficult aspects involving Jupiter, that can lead to excess and overdoing things. Moon rules the people, but it's in the 10th house, which also represents the rulers. So there could be dissatisfaction of the people with the rulers in Israel. There could be the leaders of Israel themselves doing some sort of overreach, overdoing things. Now, at the same time, transiting Uranus is making a sextile to the natal midheaven, and transiting Jupiter is making a sextile to natal Saturn, which is in the 10th house. So, whatever missteps leadership takes, I think they will survive. Um, These will be some lifelines both to Israel's leadership and to their status in the world. So, a bit of a mixed bag, some bad things, but also some good things going on. But let's hope that uh, some sort of resolution to the difficulties in the Middle East, let's hope some sort of resolution comes about. But remember, it takes two to tango. Hamas has to act reasonably also, and they have to release the hostages. Okay, now here you can look at Israel's this bar graph showing when various aspects will be in effect throughout the month of November and also into the next lunar month in December. And you can see there are a lot of difficult aspects in which Neptune is involved with, one way or another. But that sextile of Uranus to the midheaven, that will be strong throughout the entire month, and it will be exact on the 21st. If we look at Netanyahu, he continues to have a lot of difficult aspects and a lot of lifelines being thrown to him at the same time. So I rather expect that he will continue as prime minister. He has transiting Pluto, making a sesquiquadrant to natal Saturn. That can uh, transform his ability to control or regulate things in some way. Transiting Uranus square his natal Mars, just as it does uh, Donald Trump's natal Mars. This could make him very angry. It could be some change in his physical well being. It could make him accident prone or subject to assassination attempts, just like it did Trump. It's interesting that his Mars and Donald Trump's Mars are in about the same place. Transiting Saturn's making a sesquiquadrant to his natal sun. So that's putting restrictions on himself personally that he's feeling. Transiting Saturn is also making a square to his natal Venus, which is in his first house, conjunct his rising sign. So again, he is feeling personally restricted. Uh, at I would say more severe interpretations would be like physical confinement, going to jail. I don't think that'll happen, but it's a possibility. Venus also rules his sixth house of health and occupation, so there could be some illness that he experiences. And transiting Chiron, opposite his natal moon, that could also manifest as uh, physical illness or some other kind of wounding. Worst case scenario would be death, since the moon rules his eighth house of death and transformation. And he has transiting Uranus, sesquiquadrant his Mercury. Let's see, Uranus here, and where's Mercury in this chart? Oh, up here. Yeah, Mercury is in the 10th house. This could be some sudden change in his status that occurs. At the very least, he's going to be a little manic, just like Donald Trump is. He could make some rash decisions about things. So a lot of stress is still going on in his chart, but he has some good things which will really help. He has Jupiter trine his natal moon. That's going to give him a lot of luck and fortune. Transiting Jupiter, making a sextile to his natal Pluto, that will help increase his power. Transiting Uranus, making a sextile to his natal Jupiter, that will help increase his luck and innovation. And transiting Jupiter, sextile the north node, which means it's making a trine to the south node in his 10th house. This will add to his luck also and help intensify it. So uh, he has things, for instance, going on with Saturn, which will cause restriction, with Uranus, which will cause sudden unexpected events. But he also has a lot of stuff going on with Jupiter. All the good stuff involves Jupiter, and so he's still going to be very lucky and will probably, I imagine, emerge unscathed from whatever tensions he has to deal with here. And here you can see when these things are exact and when they're going to have the most impact. He's got a lot of tensions this month, as he has had all summer, but he has some lifelines coming his way again, as he has had all summer long. So, good chance he will continue. Okay, if we look at Hamas, they have had stresses all summer long. They continue to do so this month. They have one very good lifeline, which will help them likely survive. Transiting Chiron is conjunct natal Jupiter. That has been wounding Hamas's luck. Transiting Neptune has been square natal Chiron, and their revolutionary ideology winds up wounding themselves and others. Transiting Neptune square Uranus, this can be a sudden wounding as a result of their revolutionary delusional ideology, transiting Neptune, making a sesquiquadrate to Pluto, uh, the passions of their ideology drive their tendency toward destruction. Transiting Jupiter, opposite the Sun, there will be a tendency to go to excess in making certain decisions. So they're probably still going to be wounded a lot during this month by their own revolutionary ideology. But transiting Jupiter sextile natal Jupiter is very positive. That will help increase their luck and probably increase the amount of goods and supplies that they get from Iran or others. Okay, now let's take a look at Iran. Well, first we can see here when these aspects are going to be strongest, when they're going to be exact. Jupiter trine Jupiter, that is exact on November 8th. Interesting. Chiron conjunct Jupiter, that is exact and going to be exact on November 16th. Also interesting. That's when their luck may be wounded the most. The 26th, when Saturn is opposition to Sun, that's when they could go to excess in some way. And lastly, let's look at Iran. They've got a bunch of difficult aspects, but also some lifelines. These good aspects will definitely be lifesavers. Okay, now, one thing I want to point out about Iran is that the April 8th solar eclipse, or sun, moon, and Chiron were all exactly conjunct at 19 degrees 24 minutes of Aries. That was in very strong opposition to Iran's Pluto, which is at 19 plus degrees of Libra. Thus, because of that and some other things I saw happening astrologically around April 8th, I saw that there was a heightened risk of Israel and Iran getting directly into a war with one another at that time. And they almost did. Fortunately, cooler heads prevailed, and they made sort of symbolic strikes against one another, sort of shots across the bow. Well, this November, this fall and early next year, transiting Chiron will twice make a return to 19 degrees 24 minutes of Aries, which will be reactivating that eclipse point. And Chiron is going to be coming back into direct opposition to Iran's natal Pluto once again. It's already very close. And already we have been seeing things happen that could escalate into a direct confrontation between um, Israel and Iran. I think the chances of a direct war between the two will be strongest in January and February of 2025, but something could break at almost any time. Early in 2025, we're going to have transiting Uranus. Let's see, it's going to be making a conjunction with the Sun in Israel's chart, and it's going to be squaring the Sun and Mercury in Iran's chart. And that's when tensions could reach a breaking point between the two countries, but could also happen even right now as a result of Chiron reactivating that eclipse point and moving into a more exact opposition to Iran's Pluto. So that is sort of the background for what's going on there. Now, specifically this lunar month, Iran will have transiting Neptune, making a sesquiquadrate to the natal moon. That can be some sort of delusion or misinformation affecting the people in Iran, or they could want to change an ideology. They could be protesting in the streets, for example, against the current government. Transiting Saturn is right now in opposition to their natal Saturn. This is a time of restriction and contraction for Iran. Transiting Jupiter opposite natal Neptune in Iran. This is going to inflame ideologies, whether we're talking about the uh, the revolutionary ideologies of Iran's rulers, or the beliefs of Iran's people. Either way, those things could be magnified and inflamed. Transiting Jupiter, semi-square natal Chiron, could cause some sort of wounding for Iran, as could transiting Chiron opposite natal Pluto. That's why I was talking so much about when I got to this chart. Transiting Jupiter, let's see, square the north node. That will be exact on November 27th, which means they'll be squaring the south node also. That will intensify the expansive tendencies of Jupiter, but will these expand good things or will they expand bad things? That is always the question. But at the very least, the rhetoric or ideas or communications from Iran should expand since transiting Jupiter is going through Gemini. Uh, its rhetoric may become more intense in some way. On the positive side, though, transiting Chiron is making a trine to natal Neptune. Uh, Transiting Jupiter is trine natal Pluto, and it's trine natal Mars. Transiting Jupiter is completing a grand trine with this natal Mars and natal Pluto in Iran's chart. Those indicate good coordination between these powerful planets, and they will help bring about a more beneficial outcome. So, we may see some saber rattling from Iran this month, but I'm hoping that these beneficial aspects keep aggression in check. We'll also see some more restrictions, probably economic contraction of the economy this month, maybe some protests from people and leaders being driven by sort of their passions and ideological beliefs, but things may work out beneficially in the long run as a result of these trines, these beneficial aspects that are going on. And here you can see when things are going to be strongest, when they'll be most exact, and Chiron trine Neptune and Jupiter trine Pluto, they're going to be very helpful to Iran this month. Some of these negative aspects, like Neptune sesquiquadrate moon, Saturn opposite Saturn, they're there, but they're fading. And Chiron opposite Pluto, it's going to be there most of the time, but it's going to go from weak to gradually getting stronger. It will be much stronger in December, and that opposition will be exact on the 14th. So this is really a time, not this lunar month, but the next one, to keep an eye on Iran with respect to aggression and war and funding of Hamas and Hezbollah. We get into some of the more tense aspects involving Jupiter early in the month, but then they tend to fade. Jupiter will be in exact opposition to Neptune on November 5th, so it will be interesting to see how Iran responds to the results of America's presidential election. Okay, well, I think that is going to be it for this presentation. Let me stop sharing my screen. Okay, and I'm back. I'm sure this has been somewhat lengthy, but nonetheless, that's it for part one of the lunar month for countries and people. In this lunar month that goes from November 1 through November 30th. I hope you watch the presentation I do for the lunar month in general, and also for the lunar month for countries and people, part two, where I talk about Russia, Putin, Ukraine, Prince Charles, uh, Princess Kate Middleton, the United Kingdom, and also Pope Francis. Uh, and we'll see how things go for each of those countries and those individuals. And hopefully, we all make good choices rather than bad choices so that these astrological uh, influences manifest positively rather than negatively. So, I'll leave you on that note. No matter what happens, always try and make a good choice. Pick a good choice over a bad choice, and that way you'll get a good outcome instead of a bad outcome. Okay. Well, I'm stumbling over my own words right now. So for now, I'll just say so long, be well, and I hope you join me again. So long.